Hey everyone, and welcome to today's explainer. We're jumping right into a piece of lore so suppressed, so chilling, that it's going to completely redefine one of the most beloved anime universes of all time. I promise you, this one is going to keep you stuck to your screen until the very end.
Because look, you might think Goku is the strongest, right? Or maybe you think Naruto or Shibai are the absolute peak of power. Well, you are looking at the wrong gods entirely.
In the Bleach universe, there is a being who existed before the concepts of life and death were even born. I mean, even Yamamoto's absolute strongest Bankai or Aizen's complete hypnosis, they are literally nothing compared to him. He's the sole ancestor of every Shinigami, Quincy, and Fullbringer. Yet today, he's nothing more than a limbless, living corpse. Let's dive into the dark, suppressed history of the Soul King.
So to understand how an omnipotent god ends up as a living corpse, we kinda have to look at how this whole universe started. Before the world of the living, Soul Society and Heko Mundo even existed as separate realms, there was just one chaotic world. It was this single, terrifying realm completely ravaged by hollows. Life and death didn't exist in the way we know them today. It was just souls that would inevitably turn into hollows, creating this endless, brutal cycle of destruction. That is, until the Soul King finally arrived to save them all.
And the scale of this ancient chaos, it was unimaginable. In that singular chaotic world, hollows were endlessly eating other souls, evolving into giant Menos. And then those Menos were eating other Menos. The universe was literally rejecting itself because of the imbalance. But the Soul King, he stopped this endless rampage by just wiping them all out. And here is a mind-blowing detail for you. You know the endless sprawling white sands of Hukomundo? That sand is actually made up of the physical remains of the countless hollows the Soul King destroyed. He literally saved the world through sheer overwhelming power.
All right, moving on to Section 1, the original sin mystery and the Savior's betrayal.
Now imagine saving the entire world from a rampage of hollows so vast that their remains formed an entire desert. You'd think he'd be celebrated, right? Well, that was the Soul King's reward. The ancestors of the 5 noble families didn't just fear the hollows, they were terrified of their savior. Driven by that absolute fear of his power, they committed what's known as the original sin of the Soul Society. They captured their god, sealed him inside a crystal, and brutally tore his body apart. They severed his arms, his legs, and his internal organs, all while he was still fully conscious. Then, they used his immense, lingering power as a living, breathless linchpin to split that one chaotic world into the 3 divided worlds we know today.
But here is the absolute most terrifying part of this entire event. The Soul King possessed an upgraded 4-pupil almighty vision. This was vastly superior to Yhwach's 3-pupil version. What does that mean? It means he saw this brutal betrayal perfectly in the future, and he deliberately let it happen.
This brings us right to Section 2, the vengeful living limbs. Because, as it turns out, the parts are alive. You see, you can't just kill a god's limbs. The parts they cut off, they became these highly powerful, independent, and honestly terrifying entities. Take his right hand, for example. It became Mimihaji, a shadow entity residing inside Ukidake that completely controls and stops time, growth, and progression. Like if someone has a terminal disease, Mimihaji won't heal it, but it will completely stop the disease from growing. And what's crazy is that it's totally immune to Yhwach's almighty future sight. Yhwach literally cannot see what Mimihaji is going to do in any timeline.
Then you have his left hand, which became Pernida. This represents the exact opposite power, a monster of infinite progression and evolution. It absorbs powers by shooting its nerves directly into enemies. It endlessly duplicates itself, and it just never stops growing. There is literally no limit to its evolution. It's a completely immortal entity.
And his heart, it became a warrior whose power is literally to manifest miracles out of fear. Gerard Valkyrie is this overwhelmingly broken Quincy whose miracles are fueled by seemingly impossible situations. The more his opponents doubt him, and the more they fear him, the infinitely larger and stronger he grows, potentially becoming millions of times his original size. So these aren't just myths, guys. They're the Soul King's vengeance literally walking among us.
And it doesn't stop at his limbs. The god's fragments are scattered everywhere. They exist inside all Fullbringers, which is actually the true source of their unique powers. Even Orihime's powers and her chains are directly connected to the Soul King's spiritual remnants. And naturally, the ultimate mastermind Aizen knew all about this. He secretly collected these scattered fragments from various Fullbringers to successfully create and power his incredible Hogyoku.
Okay, let's jump into Section 3, the fate of Ichigo Kurosaki. And this reveals a much darker plan.
You probably think the Thousand-Year Blood War was just about the Shinigami heroically saving the world, right? Well, think again. The Shinigami leadership had a far darker plan in motion. If Yuash hadn't interfered, Ichigo Kurosaki was never meant to go home. He was being groomed by Ichibei Hyosube to be the next Soul King. And what does that actually mean? It meant being mutilated and sealed in a crystal as a breathless linchpin for eternity. The protagonist you've been cheering for all this time was being marched straight to the slaughterhouse by the very people he fought to protect.
And the only reason Ichigo was spared this horrifying destiny? Pure accident. Yhwach intervened and managed to absorb the Soul King's immense Ryatsu. Ultimately, when Yhwach was defeated, the Shinigami leadership just took Yhwach's own corpse and turned that into the new stabilized linchpin to keep the three worlds from collapsing. And in this incredibly tragic twist of irony, Yhwach actually wanted to merge the worlds back together to end his father's eternal suffering, but instead, he became the new prisoner.
Which leads us into Section 4, the God's Hatred, a genuinely chilling reality. As the worlds hang in the balance, you have to remember this. The Shinigami bow to a king they slaughtered and silenced. They call him their ultimate protector, but the source material reveals the most chilling truth of all. The Soul King utterly hates the Shinigami. Every single moment he remains trapped in that crystal, he is watching, waiting, and loathing the world he was violently forced to hold together.
But despite knowing all of this, we're still left with some massive unanswered mysteries. I mean, yes, we know he was betrayed, but was the Soul King actually a benevolent savior, or was he silently harboring evil desires from the start? Were the 5 noble ancestors completely justified in their absolute fear of him? Did they actually have to cut him up just to save themselves? And how did masterminds like Aizen and Urahara even discover this heavily suppressed truth when the top leadership actively hid it? The true morality of this entire universe remains highly ambiguous. The Shinigami built their entire society, their whole existence, on a foundation of brutal betrayal and the mutilation of the very God that saved them. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this one final provocative thought to chew on. When the good guys are guilty of the ultimate sin, who is the real villain of Bleach? Think about that for a second. Stay tuned, because the cycle of the original sin never truly ends. Thanks for joining me to unpack all this today, and keep questioning everything you see.